El Orans. Truly, for some men, nothing is written unless they write it.
Lawrence of Arabia wasn't just an epic historical drama. It was a brutal 2-year odyssey that nearly destroyed its director, star, and studio. While audiences marveled at sweeping desert vistas, the cast and crew were battling 120-degree heat, political revolutions, and near-death experiences. Peter O'Toole wasn't merely playing Lawrence. He was enduring crushed ribs, third-degree burns, and camel bites that turned his thighs purple. Director David Lean lost 20 pounds from stress and dehydration. The film went so catastrophically over budget that Columbia Pictures nearly collapsed before seeing a single frame. Today, we're diving into 20 weird facts about Lawrence of Arabia that reveal the shocking truth behind this masterpiece. And stick around for our bonus fact, the bizarre secret that was kept hidden for nearly 40 years after the film's release. Let's rip away the curtain on one of cinema's greatest achievements. 1. Peter O'Toole wasn't the first choice. He wasn't even the fifth. Marlon Brando turned it down flat. Albert Finney shot test footage, then walked away from the role of a lifetime. Anthony Perkins, Montgomery Clift, and even Dirk Bogarde were all considered before the virtually unknown O'Toole. Director David Lean was so desperate that he almost cast obscure TV actor Richard Johnson. Producer Sam Spiegel finally spotted O'Toole in a small role in The Day They Robbed the Bank of England. When O'Toole arrived for his screen test, Lean wasn't impressed. "This fellow's either the best actor in the world, or he's mad," Lean muttered. The studio didn't believe this lanky, blue-eyed Irishman could carry the epic. 7 Oscar nominations later, O'Toole would prove them catastrophically wrong. 2. The film's most dangerous stunt wasn't planned. It was a terrifying accident. The famous scene where Lawrence rides his camel through quicksand wasn't scripted that way. On location in Jordan, O'Toole's camel stumbled into a patch of deadly quicksand. As cameras rolled, the animal began sinking rapidly. O'Toole didn't realize what was happening until he was waist-deep in the suffocating sand. The crew froze in horror. With remarkable presence of mind, O'Toole gently slid off the saddle and distributed his weight to prevent sinking further. It took 4 crew members with ropes to extract him while the camel was saved by a makeshift pulley system. Lean, seeing the footage, immediately incorporated the harrowing incident into the final cut. What appears as Lawrence's stoic desert mastery was actually O'Toole fighting for his life. 3. The iconic match cut almost didn't make it into the film. The breathtaking transition from a blown-out match to the desert sunrise, voted one of the greatest edits in cinema history, was nearly scrapped. Editor Ann V. Coates faced fierce resistance from studio executives who thought it was too artsy and confusing. David Lean himself initially hated it, calling it pretentious nonsense. It was Coates who fought relentlessly for its inclusion, eventually convincing Lean by showing him the cut more than 12 times. When preview audiences gasped at the moment, the debate ended. The match cut wasn't just revolutionary filmmaking, it represented the first time a woman editor had overruled a male director on a major creative decision on a Hollywood epic. Columbia Pictures tried to credit the edit to a male assistant. Coates threatened to remove her name from the film entirely unless she received proper credit. 4. O'Toole's brilliant blue eyes caused a diplomatic crisis. Peter O'Toole's piercing blue eyes weren't just striking. They nearly got the entire production expelled from Jordan. King Hussein personally visited the set and was disturbed by O'Toole's eyes, which he felt perpetuated a Western stereotype about Lawrence having special or magical qualities. Hussein threatened to revoke filming permits unless the production agreed to tone down O'Toole's eye color. Cinematographer Freddie Young devised an elaborate system of specialized filters that would reduce the intensity of O'Toole's eyes in scenes with Jordanian officials. The compromise satisfied the king, but created continuity problems throughout filming. Eagle-eyed viewers can spot the inconsistency. O'Toole's eyes appeared dramatically different shades of blue, depending on which government representative was visiting the set that day. 5. The film killed 3 camels and hospitalized 17 crew members. The brutal filming conditions weren't just uncomfortable. They were deadly. 3 camels died from exhaustion during the production. 17 crew members were hospitalized with severe dehydration, heat stroke, and infections. O'Toole himself collapsed twice from heat exhaustion and once rode a camel through an intense scene with a 103-degree fever. The production medic quit in protest, calling the conditions criminally negligent. When shooting in the Jordanian desert, temperatures inside the camera housings reached 130 degrees, causing film to melt and equipment to malfunction. Cinematographer Freddie Young developed a custom cooling system using ice blocks, fans, and modified World War II oxygen masks to keep the cameras operational. Meanwhile, crew members were limited to 1 quart of water per day while working 14-hour shifts in full sun. 6. Anthony Quinn's makeup took 3 hours daily and caused permanent skin damage. To play Arab leader Auda Abu Tai, Mexican-Irish actor Anthony Quinn endured a brutal daily transformation. His skin was darkened with a copper-based dye containing harmful chemicals that would be illegal today. The makeup caused severe blistering and permanent discoloration of Quinn's skin. The prosthetic nose and heavier facial features were attached with an adhesive that burned his skin so severely that shooting had to be suspended for 9 days. Quinn never complained publicly, but years later revealed the makeup had triggered a painful skin condition that plagued him for the rest of his life. Despite the suffering, Quinn immersed himself so deeply in the role that actual Bedouin tribesmen working as extras approached him speaking Arabic, convinced he was a real Arab leader. 7. The film's horses were shot with tripwires in scenes now considered animal cruelty. The spectacular cavalry charge scenes featured real horses being deliberately tripped at full gallop. Steel wires were attached to the horses' ankles and yanked by crew members, causing the animals to crash violently to the ground. Several horses were injured so severely they had to be euthanized. This technique, called running W tripping, was standard practice at the time, but would later be banned in film production worldwide. American Humane Association representatives were barred from the international shoot. Director David Lean justified the practice as historically accurate, claiming, "This is how real battles were fought." The spectacular sequence where Turkish cavalry thunders through a hospital involved 68 horses simultaneously tripped by a hidden wire system. Stunt riders suffered multiple broken bones, with one man paralyzed for life. 8. The actors weren't acting heat exhaustion, they were actually dying from it. The scene where Lawrence's Arab army staggers through the Nafud Desert wasn't simulated suffering. David Lean deliberately deprived the actors and extras of water for 24 hours before filming. Temperatures reached 118 degrees during the shoot. When Lawrence dramatically gives water to a dying man, O'Toole was actually giving life-saving hydration to an extra who had collapsed from genuine heat stroke. The extra, a Bedouin tribesman, later said he thought he was going to die on camera. Medical staff treated over 40 cases of severe dehydration during the sequence. Omar Sharif reported hallucinating during his death scene, seeing his actual family calling to him from behind the cameras. Lean refused to stop filming, telling his assistant director, "The suffering is translating beautifully." 9. Columbia Pictures secretly made a truncated Christian version of the film. While audiences saw the epic 222-minute cut, Columbia created a heavily edited 156-minute alternative version specifically for religious audiences in America's Bible Belt. This version eliminated all suggestions of Lawrence's ambiguous sexuality, removed scenes showing British betrayal of Arabs, and added voiceover narration explaining Lawrence's actions as Christian missionary work. The infamous scene where Lawrence is captured in Derai was completely reshot with different actors to remove all implication of sexual assault. This secret version screened in select Southern theaters where local religious leaders received consultation credits. When David Lean discovered this unauthorized cut, he threatened to never work with Columbia again. The alternative prints were supposedly destroyed, but one surfaced at a Texas church screening in 1974, causing a renewed controversy. 10. The mirage scene caused temporary blindness in the entire camera crew. The famous sequence where Omar Sharif emerges from a mirage nearly cost the film's camera operators their sight. To achieve the shimmering effect, cinematographer Freddie Young placed powerful reflectors and specialized lenses directly in line with the brutal desert sun. The technique worked brilliantly, but concentrated sunlight so intensely that everyone looking through viewfinders suffered corneal burns. 3 camera operators were hospitalized with temporary blindness. Young himself couldn't see properly for 2 weeks after filming the sequence. The resulting footage was so stunning that David Lean insisted on 3 additional days of shooting similar effects despite medical warnings. And hey, go ahead and like and subscribe, because we're just getting started with the wild secrets behind this masterpiece. The next 10 facts reveal the dark consequences that followed the cast for decades after filming wrapped. 11. O'Toole and Sharif's on-screen friendship masked a bitter real-life rivalry. The legendary friendship between Lawrence and Sharif Ali seems authentic because the actors were performing with real emotion, just not the emotion you think. O'Toole and Sharif engaged in vicious competition throughout filming, each trying to upstage the other. Their drinking contests became legendary, with O'Toole once consuming so much vodka before a scene that he couldn't stand. Sharif retaliated by deliberately speaking Arabic too quickly for O'Toole to follow during key scenes. The tension peaked when O'Toole discovered his tent had been moved next to a camel pen, a prank orchestrated by Sharif that left O'Toole smelling of camel dung for days. Director David Lean encouraged the rivalry, secretly telling each actor the other was receiving more favorable camera angles. The famous scene where they meet at the well works precisely because the underlying tension was genuine suspicion. 12. The film's dialogue was largely inaudible and completely replaced in post-production. Almost none of the dialogue you hear in Lawrence of Arabia was recorded on location. The desert wind, military explosions, and camel noises rendered the original audio unusable. Every single line was re-recorded in London studios months later. O'Toole and Sharif spent 72 straight hours in sound booths, replicating dialogue they barely remembered saying. For scenes where actors had left the production, voice impressionists were secretly hired. Even more shocking, approximately 20% of the dialogue was completely rewritten during this process, changing character motivations and plot points. The famous line, "Nothing is written," wasn't in the original script or performance. It was added during post-production when test audiences found Lawrence's motivations unclear. Some supporting actors were stunned at the premiere to hear themselves expressing sentiments they never actually performed. 13. Lawrence's famous white robes weren't white during filming. The iconic white robes that became the film's visual signature were actually pale blue. Cinematographer Freddie Young discovered that truly white fabric created impossible exposure problems in desert sunlight, blowing out the film stock. After ruining weeks of footage with conventional white costumes, the wardrobe department secretly dyed all of Lawrence's white garments a light blue that would appear white on Technicolor film. When O'Toole discovered the switch, he refused to wear them, claiming they made him look like a hospital orderly. Director David Lean had to manufacture a fake camera test to convince O'Toole the blue robes photographed better. The compromise worked brilliantly on film, but created continuity nightmares, as real white garments were still used for night scenes. 14. The film's composer never saw a single frame before writing the iconic score. Maurice Jarre created the entire Academy Award-winning score without seeing any footage from the film. When Jarre was hired, the film was drastically behind schedule with no completed sequences to show him. Working from only a script and verbal descriptions from David Lean, Jarre composed the entire score in just 6 weeks. Columbia executives hated the music, calling it too Arabic and unnecessarily dramatic. They demanded a complete rewrite with only 3 weeks before the premiere. Jarre collapsed from exhaustion after recomposing the score in just 18 days. The famous overture that plays before the film begins was written literally the night before the premiere and recorded by musicians who were seeing the music for the first time. Lean himself only heard the complete score at the premiere, leaning over to producer Sam Spiegel during the opening sequence and whispering, "My God, what has he done?" 15. The actual desert wasn't dramatic enough, so they painted it. The vibrant orange-red sand that gives the film its distinctive look isn't natural. The Jordanian and Moroccan deserts where filming took place featured mostly pale, yellowish sand that looked washed out and unimpressive on film. Production designers secretly sprayed over 20 square miles of desert with a vegetable dye to achieve the rich color seen in the movie. Local environmental authorities were told the spray was sand stabilizer to prevent dust storms. The dye unexpectedly proved permanent, with traces still visible decades later. Jordan's tourism ministry was initially outraged, then realized the dyed areas were attracting film tourists. The Lawrence landscapes became so popular that in the 1980s, Jordanian officials actually extended the colored areas for visitors, disappointed that the real desert didn't match the movie's vibrant hues. 16. The film's famous editing created geographical impossibilities that experts still debate. Lawrence of Arabia portrays a journey across the Middle East that would be physically impossible to complete as shown. Editor Ann Coates deliberately rearranged geography to enhance dramatic effect. The sequence where Lawrence crosses the Sinai Desert shows landmarks that are actually hundreds of miles apart appearing within the same day's journey. Middle Eastern historians were so confused by the film's geography that Cairo University published a 40-page analysis of the impossible routes. When questioned, David Lean admitted, "We weren't making a travelogue." The editing created such geographical confusion that several tourist agencies in the 1960s offered Lawrence's route tours that required plane flights between scenes that appeared consecutive in the film. The famous sequence of Lawrence traversing the desert combines locations from 3 countries that would take weeks to travel between. 17. Lawrence's motorcycle crash scene traumatized O'Toole because of a dark connection to his own life. The film's opening sequence, showing Lawrence's fatal motorcycle accident, deeply disturbed O'Toole for reasons unknown to the crew. Years later, O'Toole revealed the horrifying truth. He had witnessed an almost identical motorcycle accident that killed his childhood friend. The production had no knowledge of this traumatic connection when they cast him. O'Toole never watched the opening sequence, even at the premiere. During filming, he became physically ill and had to leave the set. The brief scene showing the crash was shot with a stunt double, but the emotional reaction immediately afterward is genuine distress. O'Toole considered it cosmically cruel that his breakthrough role required him to reenact his most traumatic memory. The scene was nearly cut from the final film until preview audiences rated it as one of the most powerful moments. 18. The film's portrayal of Arabs caused such controversy that it was banned in multiple countries. Lawrence of Arabia's depiction of Arab culture ignited international outrage. Turkey banned the film outright for portraying Turks as brutal oppressors. Egypt objected to scenes implying Arab disunity and banned it until 1971. Most significantly, Saudi Arabia prohibited the film until 2017, objecting to the portrayal of Bedouin tribes as fractious and manipulated by Western powers. Jordan, where much of the movie was filmed, allowed screenings, but with 22 minutes of offensive content removed. The controversy deepened when it was revealed that several Arab characters were dubbed by British actors. Anthony Quinn and Omar Sharif became unexpected cultural ambassadors, touring Middle Eastern capitals to defend the film. Sharif later expressed regret about certain scenes, admitting in a 1995 interview, "We perpetuated stereotypes while thinking we were breaking them." 19. Director David Lean sabotaged his own film to win a power struggle with the studio. The film's infamous production delays weren't all accidental. David Lean deliberately slowed filming when he discovered Columbia Pictures was planning to replace him with a more commercial director. After overhearing executives discussing his potential firing, Lean embarked on a strategic slowdown, ordering unnecessary retakes, losing key footage that needed to be reshot, and inventing technical problems. The sabotage worked. By the time Columbia realized what was happening, the production was so far advanced that replacing Lean would have been more expensive than keeping him. Producer Sam Spiegel later admitted they were held hostage by our own investment. The studio's frantic attempts to speed up production resulted in the memorable scene where Lawrence addresses his followers, a complex sequence originally planned as a 10-minute speech that was compressed to 90 seconds due to Lean's sudden cooperation after winning the power struggle. 20. The real T.E. Lawrence's family sued to stop the film and revealed a shocking family secret. The family of the real T.E. Lawrence didn't just disapprove of the film, they launched legal action to prevent its release, revealing a long-hidden family scandal in the process. Lawrence's brother, A.W. Lawrence, filed injunctions claiming the film desecrated his brother's memory. During legal proceedings, a stunning revelation emerged. The Lawrence family possessed private letters suggesting T.E. Lawrence had fabricated key aspects of his Arabian adventures. The family feared the film would prompt journalists to investigate these inconsistencies. Columbia Pictures settled the case for an undisclosed sum and a bizarre requirement. The film would not be screened within 50 miles of Lawrence's hometown of Oxford during his brother's lifetime. David Lean was furious about the settlement, later saying, "We made a film about a man who mythologized himself, then had to mythologize our own work to protect his myth." The restriction remained in place until A.W. Lawrence's death in 1991. Bonus fact: the screen test that won Peter O'Toole the role concealed a medical emergency that would ironically perfect his portrayal. Unknown to anyone, O'Toole was suffering from acute pancreatitis during his audition, a painful condition caused by his heavy drinking. The illness gave him precisely the gaunt, otherworldly quality Lean was seeking for Lawrence. O'Toole's feverish intensity, physical discomfort, and slightly delirious delivery convinced Lean he'd found an actor who inherently understood Lawrence's complex psychology. Throughout filming, O'Toole's drinking continued partly as self-medication for chronic pain. His notorious scene where Lawrence extinguishes matches with his fingers wasn't acting. O'Toole had developed nerve damage that reduced pain sensitivity in his fingertips. What appears as Lawrence's stoic mastery of pain was actually O'Toole's medical condition. The actor never revealed this truth until a 1987 interview where he admitted, "The suffering you see isn't theatrical, it's documentary." Lawrence of Arabia wasn't just a film that won 7 Academy Awards. It was a production that permanently altered everyone involved. O'Toole never fully recovered from the physical toll. His drinking accelerated, and despite 7 Oscar nominations, he never won, a snub many attribute to his difficult reputation formed during this production. The film wasn't just shot in the desert. It was forged through genuine suffering, diplomatic crises, and artistic battles that mirrored the epic war on screen. What appears as cinematic perfection was actually beautiful chaos, captured against impossible odds by filmmakers pushing far beyond reasonable limits. The next time you watch those sweeping desert vistas, remember, the true epic was happening behind the camera.